Yeah, thank you very much. So I will be presenting work in progress. So this is on ugly in Russian and English. I have to acknowledge contribution of Jesus Romeo Tria, so with whom this is done together. He contributes his work on Spanish, but I will be just doing Russian and English. So it sort of stems from our, yes, the handout only has selected slides, so don't look at them yet. So there will be relevant slides later. So it stems from the work that we have done on beautiful. And actually, we decided to do the next step and to compare it with, well, study ugly, right? Not necessarily compare. And when I was thinking how to present it, I actually realized that I would need to tell you something about beautiful as well, because actually my thinking about ugly relates to what sort of we thought about beautiful. So there will be some, presentation on beautiful as well, but I would like kind of your main feedback on ugly, although you might have feedback on beautiful as well. Okay, let's start. So basically the idea that, of course, in science there exists understanding that humans are fundamentally similar in the way they perceive, beautiful and ugly. So some people claim that, so it's all inbuilt fundamentals. And there is, of course, the opposite view that there is considerable variation in the way people understand aesthetic appreciation. And just to note that from Western philosophical tradition goes back to Greek philosophy, where beauty, goodness, and truth were primary values. And it's interesting that from an NSM point of view, yes, we can confirm that good and true are sort of universal, but not the beauty. So what is it? Okay, and Wittgenstein gives us a very good direction for thinking in these terms. So he said, you might think aesthetics is a science telling us what's beautiful, almost too ridiculous for words, it's hard to find boundaries. And then he also said, I wish to make it clear that the important problems in aesthetics are not settled by psychological research. These problems are answered in a very different way, more in the form, what is in my mind when I say so and so, right? So he was, spot on, and NSM actually can help here very well. All right, so I'll skip that. I just want to mention the work on antonyms, right? The seminal work by Jones and co-author 2012. And so if you know this work, this is very interesting. So it's a combination of different studies on antonyms or opposites. And they also quote examples of psychological research and that they performed. And they name beautiful and ugly as, so to say, canonical antonyms, right? That you can't get any better with antonyms than beautiful and ugly. And actually, they run this experiment with, I think, native speakers. And for English, sort of beautiful and ugly apparently come together as the best examples of antonyms. So intuitively, people quote them as, so I think they come on top. So they sort of, in terms of how people think, they relate as antonyms. So the pairs beautiful, ugly, short, tall belong to an unbounded set of adjectives, which means that they are modifiable across a line that can be moderated by adverbs such as quite, fairly, pretty. And these contrasts with the bounded pairs of antonyms such as open, closed, false, true, or dead, alive, whose meaning is not acts in a bidirectional way. So that predicts that the adjective ugly, according to them, is not equal to not beautiful. Okay, so it's interesting to see how it is, right? And yes, I just want to say again that I'm not presenting a systematic comparison here, right? So I'm just thinking in these terms, but so I don't aim yet at a systematic comparison between beautiful and ugly. Okay, so let me start about kind of our previous thinking about beautiful. And you might disagree with this. Okay, but what it seemed to us is that beautiful sort of is polysemous, and perhaps you can distinguish four major meanings, right? And the one is the prototypical one. So beautiful is primarily about kind of what you see, your reaction to what you see, and the examples would be, so things are beautiful and usually people are beautiful, right? My mother was beautiful and never washed dishes, and that's a beautiful basket too, she agreed gracefully, okay? There is an extension of that which applies to hearing. And we can say something, Lorenzo said, in a beautiful deep voice. Again, voice, the ice makes a beautiful sound, right? So I'll show with explication how that relates to seeing. But Okay, so that's a different use, right? And we can talk about beautiful, what someone does. Something is beautiful, like Barcelona play beautiful football. It is without doubt one of the most beautiful games. All my life I fought for peace. I believed it was the most beautiful idea. So kind of maybe not very strictly, but still ideas about maybe what people do, well, think. Anyway, so sort of towards what humans do, right? So it's not what you perceive visually, right? And English has a very interesting use of beautiful for some sort of subjective experience. So it's used with the word experience, right? It was a beautiful experience. And it was also with taste, smell, and feel, right? Oh yes, garlic in these things is wonderful, it's beautiful flavor. So something that you eat, right? Smell. For a start, the mangoes were huge and smelled beautiful. So basically, you can use beautiful, I think, with all senses in English. A couple of schoolboys.
This is in English.
Yeah.
Because in Italian, no.
Yeah, a couple of schoolboys said the hamburgers tasted beautiful. This fabric is stretchy, soft, and feels beautiful to wear. After a good night's sleep, waking up in the morning should be the most beautiful experience of each day of your life. That was a beautiful meal, she said. Did you enjoy your time in Turkey? Yes, we had a beautiful time. Okay, so this is the attempt, I did it a bit stupidly, at explications. So the first one, the prototypical use, right? What is it? This woman is beautiful, this vase is beautiful. This thing or this someone is like this. At many times, when someone sees this thing, this someone can't not feel something very good because of this. At the same time, this someone can't not think something very good about it. Okay, so the most prototypical use. The second, beautiful singing. This thing is like this of voice. At many times, when someone hears this thing, this someone can't not feel something very good because of this, like people can't not feel something very good at some times when they see some things. At the same time, this someone can't not think something very good about it. So basically, it says that it's perception via hearing, but the prototypical experience is that of seeing, the original one. Okay, and it gets a bit different with doing things. Barcelona play beautiful football. It can, or he had a beautiful idea. It can be like this. Someone does something at some time. When someone else thinks about it, this someone can't not feel something, so they think about it, right? They can't not feel something very good because of this. Like people can't not feel something very good at some times when they see some things. At the same time, this someone can't not think something very good about it. So again, reference to the first meaning. And something is beautiful. It's beautiful flavor. It tastes beautiful. It was a beautiful experience. Someone can think something like this at some time. So it's very different meaning, actually. Something is happening to me now. I can't not know it. I can't not feel something very good because of this. Like people can't not feel something very good at some times when they see some things. At the same time, I can't not think something very good about it. Okay? Personal experience. All right, let's move to ugly. Right? So so I presented beautiful because I think I can't get away from the sort of similar division of meanings in ugly. It sort of replicates those of beautiful, although in English, so the exception is that I think ugly experience is somewhat problematic. So we don't talk about ugly taste, I think, right? Ugly smell. And therefore, there is visual perception. The artist rarely painted men claiming that men are ugly, women are beautiful. Lou wasn't good in school and his face was ugly. Truth lighting up those hideous corners of an ugly room, blah, blah, blah. So people and things. Oral perception again, Gallagher laughed at least. The ugly sounds that poured out of him might have been called that. Nico's words were all right, but his tone was ugly. And human actions, but very broadly actually. So violence is ugly. A force was sweeping Europe ugly and dangerous. I had an ugly meeting with the dean about budgets. I'd been lucky not to get too much of his ugly attention, ugly side of my personality. It had been weeks, but the ugly scene in the study was still etched in her mind. I hate you, but I'm ashamed to own up to some such ugly emotion. It was an ugly document to put one's name to, ugly as sin. So, well, maybe it's too much of generalizing because it's also about feeling, but something it's about doing things, right? So what people do, that is ugly. So it's not what they see here, but people do something. And there are two examples of ugly experience in the whole co-build corpus, and I think they belong to ugly 3, right? So I'll read them. It has reconnected him with the band of brothers, the Vietnam veterans who shared the ugly experience of serving in an unpopular war. Listen Up Geek's internet message board have become rife with consumer chat about the good, bad, and ugly. And here this is a repeat of the famous sort of phrase, good, bad, and ugly, right? So it's sort of, well, using it as a set phrase. So basically it's one example, right, in the whole corpus. Okay, so how can we try to explicate something or someone is ugly? This thing, this someone is like this. At many times when someone sees this thing, this someone can't not feel something very bad because of this. At the same time, this someone can't not think something very bad about it. So I might be wrong, but so I think in a way there is a great mirror with what beautiful is. So, but it's very bad. Ugly singing, so sort of similar with reference to saying. This thing is like this. At many times when someone hears this thing, this someone can't not feel something very bad because of this. Like people can't not feel something very bad at some times when they see some things. At the same time, this someone can't not feel something very bad about it. And something ugly, so maybe it's just too generalization, but anyway, so violence is ugly and ugly meeting. So what is it? It can be like this sometimes. Someone does something at some time. When someone else thinks about it, this someone can't not feel something very bad because of this. Like people can't not feel something very bad at some times when they see some things. At the same time, this someone can't not think something very bad about it. People know it is bad if someone does something like this. So I think the difference here is that we might require sometimes here. And I think I sort of thought about it. Maybe I'll talk about it a bit later, and that there is a social component, social evaluative component in ugly, which might not be necessarily present in beautiful. Okay, now I'll talk about, so there is some interesting thing you can get from co-build in terms of beautiful, ugly word profile comparison. So it's interesting kind of specific modifiers for beautiful, stunningly, breathtakingly, hauntingly, strikingly, achingly. For ugly, specific modifiers, downright, hideous, plain, uniformly. So something tells about the emotional aspect of these different feelings, but attitudes. But I think this is a bit more interesting. Beautiful only patterns refer to nature and landscapes. Interesting. Countryside, scenery, garden, beach, lake surroundings, landscape setting, valley. And also specific to females, princess and wife. So corpus itself distinguishes kind of word-specific collocations. Ugly specific noun collocates contain reference to human actions. Brawl, blot, scar, melee, mug, confrontation, spat, flare-up, bust up. Okay, so the preference for human actions with the social emotive component as represented in ugly 3 is missing in beautiful, so the social component. And I think beautiful specific collocates emphasize a particular status of nature in the perception of beauty. Another interesting thing is that ugly specific collocates are the verbs turn and get, right? So you don't get that with beautiful. And I think, so this is some kind of figures. And I think from here, I want to posit that maybe that's why we need sometimes in the explication, that it sort of tells us that it's more, so it's open to change more, this ugly rather than beautiful. So we need to capture that somehow. So I didn't think of anything better than adding sometimes, but maybe there will be better ways. Okay, so let's skip that. All right, I need to mention that in Russian, so beautiful, красивый, basically, it seems that it has these 3 meanings of seeing, hearing, and doing things, but nothing of the kind of the fourth meaning. So nothing like experience or feeling. It's not used with senses. Okay, and now what about the opposite of красивый? The Dictionary of Antonyms lists 4 possible antonyms, not surprisingly. So one is безобразный, ugly, frightful. Literally, it means without an image, without a face. Уродливый, so something like ugly, malformed. Некрасивый, this is exactly that stem with the negated prefix. Ugly, and дурной, bad, ill. Okay? Intuitively, to me, it seems that некрасивый is a better candidate for the opposite of красивый. And in the Russian national corpus, красивый, некрасивый co-occur 23 times, and the next candidate, the one without image, co-occurs 11 times. So I think this is sort of, okay, I'll speak about both. Okay, both are interesting, but anyway, so let's see. So некрасивый. So to say некрасивый about someone or something in Russian is very mundane. Okay, so it's not offensive. So one of the translations of некрасивый is plain, apparently. I don't think it's exactly the same as plain, but so it's okay to say, okay, her daughters are некрасивые. Right, so it's sort of, you won't say it, will not say it to the face maybe, but you don't mean anything bad about them, okay? So they just lack beauty, and you know that's the fact of life. So some examples. For again, there is visual perception. It was evident that she was in love with Sharumova, as only kind and unbeautiful girls can be in love with older, dazzling girlfriends. And why does she have beautiful eyes and a somewhat flat, unbeautiful mouth? He raised his eyes to the ceiling where there was an unbeautiful lamp hanging on a thick hook. Okay, so that's prototypical again use. We can use it about oral perception. The translation is here. So she missed her home in Haluya, so it sounds a bit not nice in Russian. Although she tried to avoid the beautiful name of her mother place and replaced it with the town in Ivanovo region. And very interesting use of некрасивый as a human action. So actually, it also is used as an adverb. He acted unbeautifully. And it's a very common use. I'll give you examples first and then maybe I'll comment. It was inappropriate to leave. I had promised to help, it was unbeautiful to leave. I had promised to help with the bags. If they didn't say it, it's unbeautiful to ask about it. We should apologize, Nina Sergeyevna. It was bad and unbeautiful on our side to talk this way about your favorite poet. His absurd and unbeautiful deeds made me feel not only resentment, but also understanding and pity. It is not good and unbeautiful, young man, not to recognize acquaintances, the giant laughed. So to me it seems to be like some sort of deviation of a norm, not acting politely in some way, not acting in a way it's expected. So that's the one. Okay, so how can we explicate? So as I said, некрасивый is just lacking some nice qualities. So, and what is it? Unbeautiful nose, unbeautiful woman, which happens. This thing or this someone is like this. At many times when someone sees this thing, this someone doesn't feel something good. Like people can feel something good when they see something. At the same time, this someone doesn't think something good about this someone. So I think it's more of a negation of good rather than bad, which is bad to an extent. And it sort of has reference, perhaps, to this prototypical feeling in beautiful, although I wouldn't posit here in beautiful or красиво. I think it's very good. It would be odd to put very good here. Okay, so that's my attempt. And this sound will be so similar at many times when someone hears this thing, the someone doesn't feel something good, like people can feel something good when they see something. At the same time, the someone doesn't think something good about this something. And некрасиво as a deed, so it's quite different, I think. So someone X did something, because of this someone else felt something bad. someone Y didn't think that someone X would do something like this. So I think it's bad because you sort of thought there was expectation of some normality and you didn't fulfill it. People know it is bad if someone does something like this. So it's quite different, you see, in the structure, and maybe that's justified also by the grammatical use as an adverb. So it stands apart a little bit from other uses. And the one is this безобразный, which is originally without an image. And actually there is such, apparently there used to be such use. I don't think it's very much popular now. So basically it means everything became blurred. Say, okay, lost the image, sort of blurred in my perception. But anyway, so безобразный, again we have visual perception. She thought that she has rarely seen such an ugly, probably ugly closest translation, ugly old man. Look attentively at yourself, your figures are ugly. So there were 240 pairs of identical crepe sops of an ugly pig coloration. So oral perception, again, the corridor was filled with the ugly sounds of with fight, but not very common use, and human actions. It was an outrageous speech. It was this ugly speech. It was very unpleasant to listen to. The person almost fell ill after the ugly conversation that you started. Immediately stopped at ugly sight. An ugly scene took place. It was the only time when my father was offended in my grandfather's house. The laws are all horrible, ugly. 50% of them need to be changed. Okay, so what about explication? The first one, this thing, this someone is like this. At many times when someone sees this thing, this someone can't not feel something very bad because of this. At the same time, this someone can't not think something very bad about it. And so it's basically like ugly, but I think might be this component, many things are not like this. So sort of this lack of image, maybe that, etymology suggests something of this kind. Okay, so it's something that, again stands out. It's not normal. Безобразный sound, this thing is like this. At many times when someone hears this thing, someone can't not feel something very bad because of this, like people can't not feel something very bad at sometimes when they see some things. At the same time, someone can't not think something very bad about it. Many things are not like this. And doing something of this kind, it can be like this sometimes. Someone X does something at some time. Because of this, something bad can happen to someone else. When someone else thinks about it, this someone can't not feel something very bad because of this. Like people can't not feel something very bad at some times when they see some things. At the same time, this someone can't not think something very bad about it. People know it is bad if someone does something like this. Also a social evaluative component. Okay, thank you. I have to stop here.